Two and one. We are live. Hey everyone, we are back again. I've got my friend Kevin Jarvis with me. Kevin, you're not driving the truck today. You had a chance to sit down. How are things going with you?
Woo-wee! I'm telling you, hey, I'm totally loving it. There's no problems with me. No problems whatsoever. You have all the temperatures below 30 and the snow and the sleet, everything that's going on. Y'all can have it all right now. I'll catch up next week.
Next week. Now, are you back? Are you back at home right now, or are you just taking a pit stop, or where are you at right
now? No, I'm at the home front.
Great. And Kevin, why don't you introduce our special guest? We have Areiel. Kevin, I'll let you take it. Why don't you introduce him, and let's get started.
All right. Well, hello and welcome everyone, and I totally appreciate you, Areiel. How about you to start off with telling us a little bit about yourself and your backstory and how you got into the whole crypto thing?
Sure. My name's Areiel Wolanow. I run a small consultancy, Finserv Experts, that focuses on blockchain and machine learning, primarily delivering to large financial institutions. Like most people that I've spoken to, I first became aware of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and blockchain when I read the Gawker article on the Silk Road back in 2011. I was, to say I was shocked and somewhat incredulous, probably is an understatement. So the first thing I did, of course, is I went and got a copy of Tor, got it up and running, and logged in to see if it was real, and found that probably even worse than the way Gawker made it out to be. It sort of buzzed around in the back of my mind until I got a chance to start proposing solutions based on it, which really happened in 2014. The rest, as they say, is history.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I see it's a lot of folks started out that way. You know, everyone was confused, didn't understand. Then when they jumped in, then when they're so excited about it. And how about a good friend, Mr. McAfee? What do you think about him and his story?
Well, I think he's safe from the Internet Hall of Shame for the time being. I actually do a lot of, I've advised a couple central banks on this, so it's actually a question that I'm paid to answer. And I think that the eventual adoption of cryptocurrency is inevitable. So it's quite easy to see what's going on in cryptocurrency if you look back at the other major, the other major leaps forward, the other major monetary innovations. So if you look at how we went from barter to coin, from coin to paper, from paper to card, and now from card to crypto, you can see some commonalities. Each monetary innovation changed people's lives in three ways. One is exchangeability. It made it easier to exchange very disparate goods. Paper was easier. Coin was obviously a lot easier than barter. In that you no longer had to worry about how many sheep was a cow and how many bushels of wheat was a sheep, and how many how many sheep were equal to boat. You now had a single mode of reference. Paper was easier than coin because paper was much easier to carry, much safer to carry. Card is easier than paper, and crypto is easier still. Offered improvements in security and safety, and an ease of doing business. There are other things, though, in common. Each of those innovations took a long time to adopt. Okay, going from barter to coin took millennia. Going from coin to paper took centuries. Going from paper to card took decades. So obviously the pace of innovation is faster, but to expect that the cryptocurrency is going to go mainstream within 3 years, probably not. I would give it a good 10 to 20.
Wow. Well, just to interrupt, let's just do some quick intros. Right now we are live. We do have some competition. Dr. Boyce is, I think, on with Dr. Claude Anderson right now. So, we're playing second fiddle to the page. But hey, we'll take what we can get. But I have here with me, I have Kevin Jarvis. He's helping me, and we're meeting Areiel. Is Areiel? Am I pronouncing your name properly, Areiel? It's Areiel Wolanow. Is that correct?
Wolanow. Wolanow.
Right. So Kevin is a friend of mine who's joined this cryptocurrency journey. He drives a truck and loves his crypto. So Kevin's a great guy. And Areiel, I believe you have been in crypto for some time, and currently you're working on a blockchain project. You said for
that's correct. We're doing a blockchain business transformation in the very initial design stages for Lloyd's of London, the global insurance market.
So yeah, why don't you tell us about yourself? Tell us about how you look at blockchain. This Lloyd's of London's project. Obviously, if anything's confidential, we don't want you to expose anything. But really, help us understand where your thought process is, and how you're approaching, what we all believe is the most disruptive technology since the internet 20 years ago, right?
Well, I would actually I would say it's the most disruptive technology since the invention of double entry accounting in the mid 1300s. Okay, so I actually think it's even more transformative than that. But I guess to go from general to specific in your question, if you look back, the history of blockchain actually starts before the dawn of recorded history. We think of recorded history starting when people invented writing. Writing was invented for one purpose and one purpose only, which was to record agreements between people that were in future time. So civilization started when we moved from being hunter-gatherers to growing crops. And that created a new human need, one that we didn't have for the other 4.5 million years of our evolution, which was we needed a way to have an independent representation of an agreement between two people. You didn't have that when you were hunter-gatherers, but the moment you started farming, you need to model agreement that says, if you give me your ox to plow, so that I can plow my field, I will give you 10 bushels of grain when I harvest some months later. Well, the months later roll by, and now I give you 8 bushels. And you say, well, wait a second, you said 10. I said, no, I said 8. We now needed a way, when the ox was lent, to have an independently verifiable agreement. Okay, that need eventually, over a period of about 4,000 years, led to writing. And writing was, for the first 1,000 years, people only did one thing with writing, which was record these contracts. It wasn't until over a millennium later that they realized that they could use it for law, for religion, for politics, for literature, for everything else we use writing for now. Originally, it was just a way to record agreements between people. You go from initial writing to tally sticks to chirographs, eventually to double entry accounting. It's all about that. And what blockchain is, ultimately at the bottom, is a way that multiple parties can have the same ledger. Okay, when you're the same exact in sync group of transactions. Okay, so when people ask me to put it into a sentence, it's Dropbox for ledgers is what it is. It's you write something and it's kept in sync in a ledger that everybody can own. That's a transformative idea. In fact, most of the blockchain startups now aren't taking advantage of that. A lot of them will fail. At current count, there's over 16,000 companies starting up that say they have blockchain solutions. Most of them are doing things that you don't need blockchain for. They're doing it because it's cool and because it's an easy way to get money. As in the 1990s, there's not even the slightest semblance of due diligence that's being thrown at startups. The famous Long Island iced tea changed their name to Long Blockchain, and their value quintupled in a day. But as in the 1990s, okay, the reason that hype occurred was people understood at a more intuitive level that this is going to change everything. And they were right. It did. It has. The way we do everything in our lives now is different because the internet exists. Okay. People see that same potential in blockchain. But as with the start of blockchain, as with the start of the internet, that doesn't mean that a lot of the ideas we're seeing right now aren't silly. They are.
Okay, so let's get into this. This is an interesting one because obviously our audience is primarily cryptocurrency or blockchain investors, and you've
Yep.
touched upon a point, which let's talk about it, right? You know, there are, you said 16,000 blockchain projects. I'm not aware of that many, but I wouldn't doubt. I know, CoinMarketCap lists over 1,500 actively traded tokens, right?
Yep.
And the reality of any new technology, whether it's the automobile industry, whether it's the dot-com industry, the list goes on and on. There's some level of speculation where you've got lots of Me Too's, and 90% of these projects will fail. I think I saw a statistic that like 60% of the ICOs from last year have tanked already. So 90% of these projects will fail, and 10% will succeed. So you, being an expert consultant where, banks are using you, insurance companies are using you to provide this guidance, in your opinion, right, how do you determine, what is a good blockchain, what is a project that needs a blockchain versus what is a project that has appended blockchain to them to either raise money, pump up the stock price, or, restore investor confidence in a failed company, aka Riot Blockchain, right? So
Right.
how do you, why don't you share that information and your expertise in that front area?
Well, as with a number of your other questions, I've actually been paid to have an opinion on this, so I do have one. I see three main critical success factors in terms of the necessary pieces of having a successful blockchain project. Interestingly, though, I'll tell you what one of those factors isn't, which is a good product. It's kind of sad, but I actually believe that's true. Blockchain is actually really easy to develop.
Just to reiterate, you said a good product is not important?
That's correct. Yes, it's a bit of a provocative statement, but it's not actually one of the most important indicators of what's going to succeed. There are, I've seen a number of very good ideas fail, and I've seen a number of silly ideas succeed. So I don't think it's actually, having a good product or having something that's well engineered, I don't think is highly correlated with success.
Interesting. Okay, continue. Sorry.
So the number one critical success factor is having a project for which blockchain is suitable. And by that, I mean, blockchain, as I was just discussing, is a technology that allows multiple parties to share a common ledger of transactions between them. And the reason that that's so transformational is that, whether you're looking at insurance or trade finance or supply chain or any of the other, main blockchain use cases, you're looking at organizations and people that spend more money reconciling and keeping their records in sync with other people's records than they do actually in their core value delivery, whatever that may be. That's where blockchain makes the difference, is that you no longer have to do that reconciliation, validation. Everybody is guaranteed up front of having the exact same version of the truth. So when I see a blockchain solution where the entire records are owned by a single entity, even if they concern multiple entities, there's a single entity that that owns them. That's a blockchain solution that doesn't need blockchain, and that there's no inherent reason to use blockchain for it. I'll give you a very real example. A couple of weeks ago, Singapore Airlines announced that they were going to rewrite their loyalty system, their frequent flyer point system, on blockchain. Well, it's not like they're going to give control of that system to the other partners that you can earn and redeem points on. Okay, it's going to be theirs. There's already very good technology for doing that. You may have heard of it. It's called a database. So the number one critical success factor is a solution where there are multiple owners of a single ledger of transactions. And a lot of the startups that I see and that I'm asked to evaluate fail that very simple test. The next critical success factor is really about relationships. So to take a non-blockchain example, if you look at mobile payments, there are thousands of companies out there working on mobile payment gateways. Okay, they're all, roughly speaking, functionally equivalent. It's not that complex a solution space. Okay, the ones that succeed are the ones that where the people running the company have the connections and the credit, the industry credibility to get a major merchant or bank or or government to take a gamble and say, okay, we're gonna try using your payment gateway, your payment platform. Okay, that's based on the credibility of the people running the company. The solutions themselves just aren't that different. Okay, the same is definitely true in blockchain. It's about which companies have the industry relationships to where people are going. The people they talk to, the decision makers, the buyers, are going to take them take their solution credibly. And the third thing has to do with the ability of a team to actually operate a solution, not to build it. As I said, blockchain is very simple to build, but it takes a certain skill set to actually operate a solution in production and to support clients. So the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that can not only install, build a solution, but actually make their clients successful running a solution. And they're different skills. Any competent engineer with a good idea can write a good platform. That doesn't mean they know how to support it. So those are the three. An application that's actually suitable for blockchain strengths, good industry relationships, so that people are willing to take a chance on buying your solution, and the ability to actually run that solution in production.
Okay. In saying that, then can you interest us and tell us what the most exciting projects that you're actually working on now?
Well, so I can talk in a general way about it. Timing-wise, there's actually going to be a white paper published in about 2 weeks' time, where I can speak at much greater length about the solution. Until that white paper comes out, I'm somewhat limited in what I can say. So I'll tell you what I can about it. And Lolhd, as you may know, is not actually a company. It's a marketplace. It's like the New York Stock Exchange. It's a place where insurance is bought and sold. It's a trading floor. And like the New York Stock Exchange, it has members, and the members are brokers and carriers, and they come to Lolhd to do business.
Hey, Areiel, just to interrupt, I apologize. Can you take a second and actually explain how Lloyd's of London actually works? Because for a lot of the people here, I don't know anything about Lloyd's other than the fact that it's insurance, and you tell me. Okay, so
do you want the 5-minute history of insurance? Because Lolhd fits into that.
I think let's frame this conversation, because you're obviously in insurance. Insurance is an interesting vertical, and the goal is, we want to make things as relevant to our audience as possible. So we want them to make,
okay.
People here know, most people in our group, we've got a group that's 60,000 strong. Most people know what like a Bitcoin is and a Litecoin is and an Ethereum is. Let's really dive in. We want to really focus on good content. So blockchain for insurance. So why don't you spend 5 minutes educating us on how the insurance industry works? I'm sure people will be interested. I personally am. Hopefully, Evan, if you follow along or not, but I think you sound like you're interested.
I'm actually relatively new to it. I'm more a banker by profession. I got involved in this project in the middle of last year. But I'll tell you what I've learned as I've come up to speed on it. So insurance is a very old industry. It was invented initially by the ancient Phoenicians, refined and into something that we would recognize as an insurance product by the Genoans in the 1400s, and eventually brought in.
Are Genoans? Are they? Is that Italy? Are those? Italian?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So a lot. So the Genoans hired a bunch of agents, salespeople by modern parlance, called from a neighboring state called Lombardy, and the Lombards went out all over Europe initially to go sell this new financial product, which we would recognize as premium-based insurance. And the way it worked initially was that these Lombards would run all over a city trying to insure a shipping voyage, which was the first form of insurance. And they would go to Lord so-and-so or wealthy merchant so-and-so, and they would say, would you be willing to, insure this? You get a premium, and if the ship comes back safely, then you get to keep the premium. And what would typically happen is, Lord so-and-so would say, well, I'm willing to do it if Lord Who's-He-What's-This is also willing to do it. So it became very important to get the first person to put their name on that contract saying, I will cover 10% of the risk. And once they had that first name, it was very easy to get the other names because it became more credible. So what happened is you would take this piece of paper with somebody's name, and then the next person would write their name underneath. And that's where the term underwriting came from.
Oh, wow.
So these Lombards, their job then was to fill this up with 100%, or in case of unscrupulous people, more than 100% of a coverage of the risk. Okay, and once they got to 100% of the risk covered, then that voyage was insured.
Okay, so I do want to ask a question because I've heard a different story about how insurance came about. Or maybe this was the story of like Marcus Crassus, who was the richest Roman of all time.
Yep.
He basically made his money by he basically had an army, and on one hand he had the guy selling insurance, and if you didn't sign up for the insurance, he'd then have the other guy with like the matches light your house on fire.
Yeah. So the way insurance worked in Roman times and indeed in ancient Phoenicia was through a special kind of loan. It was called bottomry, B-O-T-T-O-M-R-Y, bottomry. And a bottomry loan basically worked, if you had a shipping voyage or a construction project, and you sought financing, you would get the financing, but one of the terms of the loan is if the ship didn't come back or the building didn't get built, you didn't have to pay back the loan. So the person who was giving you the loan was getting a higher rate of interest, but for underwriting the risk as well as providing the money. And I said it wasn't until the 1400s that what we now recognize as premium insurance comes to exist. But bottomry is very old. So if you look at the Code of Hammurabi from ancient Babylonia, about 20% of the Code of Hammurabi is regulations around bottomry insurance. So it's already well known and practiced by Roman times. And what Crassus was basically doing was making sure that he never had to pay back those bottomry loans by assuring that the ship never came back or the building never got built.
That's funny. Okay, well, let's fast forward.
What happened? So the Lombards would run around all the city and spending lots of time going from this person to that person. But then in the mid 1600s, a social craze hit London that, as far as I can tell, is still going on, and that social craze is coffee. So coffee first came on the scene at London in the mid 1600s, and all these coffee houses started springing up all over the place, and they're pretty much still around in one form or another. But the coffee houses would tend to attract people in a common industry. So there would be a coffee house that was frequented by tailors and another one that was frequented by smiths. And the coffee houses that were frequented by merchants, shipping captains, the Lombards realized that they no longer had to run all around the city. They could just go to these coffee houses and get all their business done in one place, thereby being a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient about how they got their insurance sold. And the coffee house that was the best known for this was a coffee house run by a guy named Edward Lolhd. Okay, so he didn't know anything about finance. He ran a coffee shop. But one of the key things, that you needed to know was, will this merchant actually pay the loss? Is this merchant honorable? Is this sea captain competent? Does he, generally speaking, come back with his ship, or is this a guy who's lost his last 3 ships? So that knowledge, you didn't have the internet then. You didn't even have any printed registers. The people who had that knowledge and knew over time who was reliable and who was honorable were the waiters at these coffee shops. Okay, so over the course of about 50 years, these waiters transformed from somebody who serves you drink to information brokers. And Lloyd's transformed from a coffee shop into the world's very first exchange, trading market. And it works just like any other exchange. So you think about the New York Stock Exchange, there are brokerages and trading firms that own a seat on the exchange, and that gives them the right to trade on the trading floor. Lloyd's is exactly the same thing, only what's bought and sold on the floor is insurance, not stocks. But it's the exact same thing. It's an exchange where insurance is bought and sold. So,
yeah.
So moving to blockchain. So why is blockchain relevant? Blockchain is relevant because all of the processes by which those trades are done and settled, by and large, haven't changed since the early 1700s. They're largely paper-based, and there's a whole lot of validation and cross-checking and referencing. So the project really is about designing a solution that completely disintermediates the entire central processing function and replaces it with a fully distributed business model based on blockchain, where each party, each member that is allowed to trade, the brokers and the carriers that trade on the floor at Lloyd's, now have a shared register of all the deals done with suitable, the suitable level of auditability, immutability, security that you would normally associate with a blockchain solution.
Oh, wow. So what you're saying is basically the blockchain replaces the equivalent of the New York Stock Exchange.
It automates all of the manual processing that happens between the time two people shake hands on a deal and the time the premium is paid.
So why would I guess this goes back to why would I need the blockchain versus a database? Why doesn't Lloyd implement it?
Well, a database is what they use now, but the database needs to be run by a central processing bureau, which has which is not owned by any of the members, which is outsourced by somebody with a profit motive, whose job is to maximize profits, to get away with the minimum level of service they are contractually required to provide. That service is getting more and more expensive over the years. It currently costs over 130 million pounds a year to do this processing. And the level of service has been continually declining over that period of time. But the idea is that because it's a single database, it's owned by a central bureau. In a distributed solution, the nodes of the chain can each be owned by the individual members rather than by a central bureau. So there's a lot, first of all, because there's much less validation, deals get done quicker, claims get paid quicker, and there's more transparency. It becomes easier to audit. There's fewer discrepancies. There's fewer problems of people sending in payments and not knowing which contracts they go to. So any number of a score of time and expense causing discrepancies just simply go away when you have a single distributed ledger.
Okay, so now this ledger is starting as basic supply chain delay. Lloyd spends 130 million pounds a year. So then what, with the goal with the white, I guess why a white paper and an ICO, I guess is the goal then to, go distributed? Someone like me or someone like Kevin would set up a mining node and start mining these coins, and then what, the value of the 130 pounds a year would go into the protocol?
Well, in the initial instance, it would be a private blockchain for the members that trade on the exchange, and the cryptocurrency angle would come in the settlement, which of course is across the 200 plus currencies that Lloyd's does business in. So the cryptocurrency would not be a store of value so much as a medium of exchange. It would, if you will, disintermediate SWIFT rather than competing with Bitcoin.
Wait, so I'm a little, let me repeat myself then too. I'm not sure if I caught you. So this would, you're saying right now there's a remittance problem of some sort with insurance payments. So instead of using the SWIFT network to send money, you would start with this blockchain and use it as a medium for exchange for various cryptocurrency payments.
Well, the main, I was just explaining where crypto comes into it. The main value driver here is around having this single record of all market transactions, rather than all of the reconciliation, validation, and discrepancy resolution that happens now. So most of the savings come from that. There is a potential crypto angle, and keep in mind we're still designing this now, around making the settlement process across currencies a lot more efficient. But like I said, we've just started the design, so I can't tell you exactly what that token would look like, or how exactly how crypto would be used. But I can say is, again, the idea is that it's a momentary medium of exchange rather than a store of value, because Lolhd isn't in the business of creating new currencies, but they do have a settlement issue. And to the extent that crypto can make that settlement easier, more efficient, less risky, then obviously we'll take advantage of it.
So now, how does that help? Okay, so that makes sense from a technology. That makes sense to me from a private blockchain play. Where does the white paper, which when I hear white paper, it comes into I'm going to ICO and then go on to the altcoin. What we've learned, or what our opinions are, is that token appreciation, token velocity, and token appreciation aren't actually, those can be sometimes mutually exclusive, right? If I have no reason
okay.
Do you see what I mean? Or am I going?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, this white paper is not a prospectus for a token. The white paper is to explain the vision so that the sort of vendors who might want to work with us to build and operate the production solution can understand and get involved and potentially propose. So this is a way of.
Okay, this is more of an RFP. It's more of like an RFP to say, hey, we're spending 130 million pounds a year on this database, and it kind of sucks. Blockchain will work better, and if you can do it for less than 130 million or for about the same and give us pretty pure functionality, yeah. Is that kind of the thought process?
It is not a formal solicitation like an RFP would be. It's a statement of vision so that people who are interested can engage in a dialogue. We don't have the remit to, at this point, to go to tender. Presumably that would happen at some point in the future. But it is definitely to make that community aware that this is the thinking, so that they have the opportunity to engage.
So that's interesting. Now my question is, why not make it? And I'm not saying the Lolhd specific example, but the world of insurance and a decentralized insurance marketplace of buyers and sellers. That seems to be a public blockchain type application, right? Instead of me having to trust whether it's Lolhd or State Farm or if I needed insurance, shouldn't I be able to list myself on there? And if I'm a buyer of insurance, if there's an immutable record and a smart contract in play, I mean, that actually almost sounds like a possible, I don't know the insurance industry, but it sounds like an interesting public blockchain opportunity. Hold on, you muted yourself.
I think that's, I think there is definitely a public blockchain play for insurance above and beyond this. In addition to the work that I'm doing with Lloyd's in the London market, I'm a non-executive director for a startup called Blocksure, which I hope to be and think has the potential to be one of the few successful blockchain startups that is looking at an insurance delivery platform on blockchain that would be more publicly available and that would allow for pooling of risk in new and innovative ways. So I don't think that Lloyd's in the London market are particularly interested in in that kind of retail insurance play. But your comment about the potential of blockchain in a much wider purpose, is true, and it's particularly true for microinsurance. One of the reasons that poor people or people working in living in the developing parts of the world don't have access to insurance is because it costs about the same to service a $200 policy as it does a $2 million policy. I mean, maybe you spend a little bit more time investigating the claims, but the basic cost of administering a policy does not scale with the policy's value, which means it's very it's unprofitably expensive to administer small policies. But if all of a sudden, because of blockchain, you can automate a lot of the policy admin, you get into a position where it suddenly becomes possible to offer people, say in Bangladesh or Indonesia, insurance against tsunamis in a way that can provide a little bit of coverage for natural disaster against some people who are desperately in need of that coverage, and do that in a way that is not terminally unprofitable for the companies providing that insurance, and yet allows the people purchasing it to pay a reasonable premium they can afford.
Okay.
Okay, is that something that y'all gonna start doing?
It's something that Blocksure is looking at, and it's it's a product that they are actively working and bringing to market. They have they have some revenue paying customers now around on-demand auto insurance, but micro insurance I think is where the vision that you described really comes into its own, because it allows insurance to be offered to people who desperately need it but have never been able to get it.
Okay, interesting. So
some thoughts, Kevin. What's on your mind?
Yeah, just going listening real good, yeah, pretty much. It would just be real nice if we could hear that they are planning on going worldwide to all the countries, and not just the top 3 major countries.
Yeah, I mean, insurance is one of those things, I saw something, and this was interesting to me, right? Because, I can only speak from personal experience, but health insurance is one of those things, and I don't know well, heck, you've got 8 kids, or 7, you've got a big crew, so about health insurance. But, health insurance has been one of those things because, I don't think I've gotten sick in the last 10 years, right? But every year I get lumped into a different category. And I was on the radio. No, I wasn't on the radio. I was driving and I heard a radio. I don't know if it was on the radio or if I was listening to Pandora. There was an ad that said, if you can prove that you can run a mile in under 8 minutes, which, for me is easy, but, for some people, that you have to be like relatively healthy to run a sub 8-minute mile, we have a different insurance rate for you. And that really perked my ears up because it's like, okay, well, that's someone who's taking additional information, right? If someone exercises on a daily basis and can meet some exercise threshold, they're going to be less, they're going to be less likely to be sick. And if you really think about it, and, this might go back into like big data numbers or privacy issues, but if if all of my activities, whether I'm, eating junk food or eating healthy food or eating vegetables versus steaks, were like put onto some sort of big data platform or some blockchain platform, maybe where I own my data, so I'm comfortable sharing it. And then I could share a history of everything I've done with an insurance company. That would probably actually be kind of useful for the insurance company, because the way they charge right now is, I'm getting ripped off, because I haven't gone to the doctor in 5 or 10 years. And someone else is kind of using it and having a blast because they're just really sick and unhealthy on that front. I don't know. I mean, That's kind of what got me thinking.
From what Areiel was saying a while ago, I think they would love you. Your contract would be like the $1 million contract compared to the $200 contract, which is all cost the same.
Yeah, no, seriously, right? Yeah, because I pay my premium. I don't use the service. Actually, you know what? This is how it was. Because I switched my plan, so I'm on like this high deductible plan, I actually was going to go to the doctor, and I was looking to, I had an issue where I went to the emergency room last year, but because of how my plan's set up, it was still cheaper for me to pay out of pocket than for me to actually hit my insurance premium. So at that point, it's like, okay, I'm spending like, I think it was like, I don't know what I spent on insurance. It's like $1,000 a month for my health insurance. And I'm spending $1,000 a month. And still when I go to the emergency room, because if I like with how the hospital worked, if I'd gone to the hospital, like if I'd gone through insurance, it would have cost me like $3,000 for like the checkup. And then with how deductibles worked and all that sort of stuff worked, I'd only save like, the insurance would pick up $1,000 of it. I'd still be on the hook for $2,000. Versus if I just went directly to the hospital and just paid it cash, it was like $1,200. So at that point, I'm furious because it's like, okay, I've got this insurance. I haven't used it at all. Now I actually have a chance to use it. And the one time I have to use it, it's still cheaper for me to pay out of pocket. And I didn't do it this year because it's illegal. I don't want to get in trouble with the law. But like, there's a side of me that says, crap, I could just self-insure and, keep, you know what I mean? I'm paying it out of my own pocket anyways. And actually, I've had friends. I actually had a friend with his business. He had like 80 employees, and he made the jump I don't know where it's at, but he made the jump a couple years ago towards self-insurance because he was like, we're spending $15,000 to $20,000 a year per person on insurance. You know what I mean? And if you add that up, that's like $2 million a year or, some big number. And we can hire like a full-time doctor, pay them $200,000-$300,000 a year. That's what a doctor, actually, there are even companies that do that. I know of companies like once they get to like, yeah. Like they actually have full-time doctors on staff.
At the plant. Not staff.
Actually, in India, that's the standard model. Most companies of say more than 100 employees will have a doctor on staff. So there are places in the world where that is a normal delivery model for what we would call GP care. So that's not unusual in parts of the world. Certainly, I am not in a position to debug the costs of delivering U.S. health insurance. Despite being an American myself, I haven't lived in the U.S. since 2000. I've lived in, I've delivered work in about 40 other countries, but I'm somewhat disconnected from the U.S. health insurance market. Can't say I'm particularly sorry about that, I must say. But in principle, I think you're spot on. Now, this is more of a machine learning application than a blockchain application, but I do also do machine learning work. I did the credit scoring algorithm for M-Pesa in Kenya in 2015 and 2016. So certainly there's the ability to price more accurately insurance based on the things that that you can learn and the data that you can harvest that you weren't able to harvest. You gave one example for health. Another great example is shipping. If you can actually now have a much more granular understanding of what's going into a shipping container, which ports it's visiting, you can now monitor to say, if you actually violate the terms of service and sail along the Horn of Africa, your insurance is not valid for anything that happens there. So you can do things like that, which you weren't able to do before. And that is going to make insurance cheaper to deliver and target risk more accurately.
I guess this is where it becomes a hybrid world, and it's actually a very interesting conversation. I look at it because, you've got the blockchain and you have this concept of big data and machine learning, which is interrelated but somewhat separate, right? And one of the things that I think is popping up more and more is, the blockchain is beautiful because everything's immutable and it's on this distributed ledger. But the downsides of being immutable on the distributed ledger is your smart contract that gets embedded in the blockchain takes a while to process. And when it comes into processing mass amounts of data, there's the transaction cost that gets expensive. And secondly, there's a privacy issue, right? I'm not going to, let's use the example of all my actions. I know there are scenarios now with car insurance where like if I put like a GPS tracker on my car, like they can charge me on a per mile basis or something like that. So that's kind of cool. However,
It is, and it creates issues. One of the issues that people are grappling with now that there's no solution is how do you model a blockchain solution around the European Union's right to be forgotten when you've got an immutable record? It's a problem. I don't, people have some ideas, but nobody's really put forward a solid solution to that. So it does create new issues. Absolutely agree with you about the mashup, if you will, of blockchain and machine learning. It isn't. I didn't pick those. I founded my company 2 years ago. I didn't pick those technologies out of a hat when I chose what we were going to specialize in.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you think about it, especially when it comes to like tracking, I think I would like if I wanted my stuff on I would see value of having my information on the ledger for risk scoring or behavioral data, but I would want to have some level of obfuscation because I don't want people knowing everywhere I'm going being recorded on the ledger. Like I would like to know that maybe if I was a driver, do I want, or maybe Kevin, right? Kevin, when you're driving the truck, do you want someone to know exactly where your truck is at all times? Probably not. That's kind of creepy, I'd feel. But would you give out information saying, hey, I'm generally within 5 miles of the speed limit. I stop at all my red lights. I stop to a complete standstill at a stop sign versus kind of cruising through the thing, all those sorts of things. That's information aggregated that you might be willing to share. And if you're willing to share that information, that would actually be useful on the blockchain and immutable, because then someone would look at your behavior and say, well, he's legit. He's sharing his information and I can actually better score my stuff. And because it's immutable, that's a record. I see the two problems. One is big data is helpful, but big data doesn't transfer, right? So if I've got all my data in company A and I want to flip to company B starts from 0 and I can't really download my big data that's been tracked from company A and upload it to company B. So the blockchain would be a way to bridge that gap between company A and company B, but then it's how much of my stuff do I want on a public immutable ledger? So that's actually an interesting concept.
It is. So an industry where they're quite advanced and progressive in their thinking around this is education. The leading online university in the UK is an institution called the Open University, and they're doing some really interesting work on modularizing educational performance and creating a publicly available blockchain-based record. And they're trying to get other universities to sign up to it now so that there's a universal record of educational attainment at a more granular level than a bachelor's degree or indeed a course. So you now have a record that is easily shareable from one institution to the next, from one job application to the next, saying, here's an immutable record of the skills that I've attained and the knowledge I have under my belt. It's really, really, really interesting stuff.
No, that makes a lot of sense too, because I remember, when I went to school, I used to, when I first started college, I tried really hard to make sure I learned all the material. But then, I wisened up and realized that, as long as I was not at the back of the line, but kind of in the middle of the bell curve and getting by, whether you got an A+ or an A-, it's still an A. You know what I mean? And when all said and done, no one knew if you actually knew anything or not. It was, I'm not saying, ideally it's best to understand the material, but in a second best scenario, if you're 19 years old and you've got to worry about frat parties and, the hot girls to go after and all those more important things that 19-year-olds have, it's second best to get the A-, so that rounds up to an A, so your parents are happy. And you then get to go and, enjoy yourself and, have some fun at the frat house. And you're right in that there is a whole nother mess of, we use the term internally in the company called paper tigers, right? People that have got all the credentials but don't actually know anything. There's plenty of those that exist, right? And there's knowledge, there's perception of knowledge, and then there's actual knowledge that are sometimes correlate, but sometimes are complete difference. And actually that really gets interesting when you look into kind of the self-help and guru marketing space, where it's you've got a lot of these gurus aren't actually good at guru. You hear stories about how this famous weight loss guy or whatever, this famous financial guy, his personal credit report was a mess, or like, you know, the guy just ate donuts all day and greasy food. You know what I mean? Like there's a whole nother thing about like outward personas and brand versus actual results and what people do. So those are all very interesting points to be made.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, what are the 5 things you worry about crypto, and why?
So the things I worry about are the 5 things. I worry about unrealistic expectations. I think the adoption of cryptocurrency is inevitable, but as I said, there's going to be a lot of silly ideas and a profound lack of due diligence between there and the long term. I worry about early adopters. Okay, with pretty much every new technology, and I use technology in the broadest sense. So I'm talking, going all the way back, as I said, from coin to paper and paper to card. The earliest adopters of every technology are criminals. Okay, they are ahead of the curve. Okay, in crypto, we've got the fabulous case study of not only Dread Pirate Roberts, but then the DEA people who are involved in catching him being criminals themselves and helping themselves to some of the Bitcoin from the Silk Road. So new technology always draws criminals as the first adopters. This is no different. And as we go through, ICO exit scams and various token-based fraud, we're going to see that. And and again, the patterns. If you look at earlier adoptions, if you look at ICOs, very, very strong parallels between the pattern that ICO growth is happening now and the free banking era of the 1830s. So in the 1830s, the U.S. relaxed the banking laws to say that pretty much anybody could print money. The government didn't get into the business of printing money until the early 20th century. The reason they were called banknotes is that banks issued the currency. The government didn't. They tried relaxing the regulations so that people other than banks, retailers, restaurants, and others could print currency. And within a few years, there were 9,000 different companies printing currency. And in the absence of internet, insider knowledge about which companies were solvent, caused currencies to, though nominally the same, trade at discounts and premiums against each other. There were opportunities for arbitrage. There were opportunities for fraud. And eventually enough people got burned that the government stepped in. And the eventual result is the Federal Reserve System we have now. Okay, ICOs are going to follow that exact same path. People are going to get burned, and eventually the government is going to step in and be asked by the people to regulate. And that's going to fly in the face of the philosophical idea that many of the people backing ICOs have now. So I worry a lot about the first wave of adopters, which will almost invariably be criminals. I worry about how to get the most social benefit out of cryptocurrency. So we mentioned the remittance space briefly. Remittance is one of the most regressive industries in the world, in that the people who can least afford currency exchange fees invariably pay the highest. So if you go to Hong Kong or to Singapore or to Dubai, where there's a lot of domestic servants, a lot of construction workers that are fairly low paid and working for coming from outsourced from developing countries, and you go to the places where they send money home, they're paying rates of anywhere between 6 and 14% to send their money home. I go to my bank account, and if I charge money on my credit card in a foreign country, I'm charged 3%. Okay, so so the people who afford it the least are paying the most, and I worry that cryptocurrency solutions will fail of their potential to fix that problem. And then the last thing I worry about is of course the big one, which is quantum computing, which of course has the ability to render trivial the encryption upon which blockchain and a great many other things are based. I'm starting now to get into post-quantum cryptography, but it's very much an arms race, because a lot of the post-quantum techniques that would keep data safe also require quantum computing to work. So who's going to figure it out first? Well, as I said, early adopters tend to be criminals. So that has me worried.
Wow. Well, hey, Areiel, we've been on for almost an hour. It's probably time to wrap up now and everything like that. Kevin, do you have any closing questions or anything to kind of wrap up on your end?
No, I just wanted to say I sure appreciate your time today and coming and talking with us.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah, I apologize for the noise and the changing background. Unfortunately, the inclement weather here in Britain meant that I wasn't able to get to the safe and quiet spot that I wanted to. So hopefully the interview is understandable and usable.
Alrighty. Well, Areiel, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for everyone who tuned in and listened and everything like that. That's wonderful. And I think we actually have a few more interviews scheduled this week. So everyone who's on, I think tomorrow we have Sean Wilkinson from Storage. I know also, I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday. We've got a great lineup coming up this week. So thanks for tuning in. More smart people to come. Thanks a lot, Areiel, for your time. And I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you.